Good evening, everyone. I think we will start now. If the others join in later, so we'll let them join in later. It's time that we started. Thank you for joining this forum. This is the fourth forum in conjunction with the World Earth Week. We did two on Friday and we had one this morning, and this is our fourth one. We have three very interesting speakers today, and the focus of this afternoon's forum will be on waste and pollution. Yeah. So let me just share my screen with you. So this afternoon we have Puan Norlin Jaafar. I think everybody in this forum will know her. Puan Norlin is, of course, the Director General of Department of Environment Malaysia. So we are very pleased to have Puan Norlin here today to share her views. Puan Norlin has been with the Department of Environment for a very long time. I think many of you might remember her when she was the Director of Evaluation, Pengarah Penilaian, where she was responsible for ERE at the DOE headquarters, and then she was promoted as the Deputy DG and recently as the Director General. And Director General at a very challenging time with our COVID pandemic and so on. So Puan Norlin, once again, welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Our second speaker is Dr. Teng Lee Chong, who is an independent waste management expert. Dr. Teng, when I first met him, he introduced me as the rubbish man because he deals with waste. And he has more than 20 years of experience in managing waste. He got his PhD from University of Fukuoka, and many of you might remember Fukuoka as the place where the nuclear plant was. And Dr. Teng has worked with many organizations, and he has served as an expert to international organizations such as JICA, DANIDA, UNDP, UNEP, and he has worked in many countries, including Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Right? And Dr. Teng is also called upon to speak at many seminars and forums. And Dr. Teng, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And our third speaker is Mr. Lee Hoglok, who's from ERE Consulting. Mr. Lee is a director of ERE now, and he has more than 20 years experience in the consulting field, having worked in many organizations covering a wide range of subjects. So he has done work on natural resources, on industrial pollution, on climate change, on construction sector, and so on. So Mr. Lee is a very experienced consultant. Of course, finally, you have me, Bala, I'm the managing director of ERE, and I'm your moderator today. So before we go on to the speakers, I just have a few slides to share with you. But before that, again, reminder to switch off your microphone and video at all times. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, the world is changing. And three of the biggest drivers of change is demographics, climate change, and technology. In my view, these are the three factors that will change the way we live and work in the coming decades. As you know, our population is expected to reach 46 million by 2050. That is 12 more million people compared to today. And of course, 12 billion more people, we need to house them, provide education, provide jobs, we have to provide food. So there's going to be a lot of demand on our environment. And a lot of these people, the additional population, will live in our cities. The rate of urbanization now is about 77 or 78%, and this is projected to rise to 87% in 2050. So by 2050, almost 90% of our population will be living in cities. And this, of course, has implication on how we manage our waste and our pollution. Our GDP is expected to triple by 2050. So the size of the economy will be very large. provided the COVID doesn't cause too much trouble in the coming years. Our primary sector has been declining and will continue to decline, and the services sector will become very dominant in our economy. But with economic growth comes environmental challenges. And those of you who are in this field, you know very well that our challenges are becoming increasingly complex as our economy grows. And the number of issues that we have to deal with, and I'm sure Puan Norlin can share with you, are increasing by the day, and they are getting very complex. As the population grows, the amount of waste will increase, and we are seeing that trend very clearly. The amount of pollution will increase as industries and commercial facilities grow in numbers. So while we already have plans how to manage this, the challenges in the coming decades will be more complex, more severe, and therefore the way we manage our waste and pollution in the coming decades will also have to change. We are also generating more waste. Data that we have now shows that per capita waste generation has increased from 0.8 kilogram per person per day to 1.2 kilogram per person per day over a period of 15 years. That's a 50% increase in just 15 years. So we are generating a lot more waste. I don't have the exact data, but I think that this year we'll be generating anything between 3 to 4 million tons of hazardous waste. So these are all large quantities, and which creates major challenges to the way we manage and imposes a lot of difficulties on our financial budgets as well. So these are just some of the initial data just to set the mood for the evening. And in all accounts, the amount of waste and pollution are on the rise, simply because population and number of economic activities is increasing. So quantity of municipal waste, hazardous waste, sewage, industrial effluents are increasing. And I think one of the biggest challenges in the coming decades will be how to keep them at a manageable level. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to call upon Puan Norlin Jaafar, who's the Director General of DOE Malaysia, to start off the session. Puan Norlin, maybe before what you can do, maybe just very quickly share with the participant your job today, how difficult it is, and then maybe take us through what you think are the key challenges in terms of waste and pollution in the coming 2 decades. Yep, everyone is very eager to hear from you. Puan Norlin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dr. Bala. Thank you, everybody. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and a very good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Bala and the team for inviting DOE to participate in the ERE Webforum in conjunction with the Earth Day week. So, well, to share some experience, I was being promoted to be the DG of Environment last June, and it's about more than 8 months, and a lot of challenges in terms of even before the COVID, because once I've been tasked to hold the post of Director General of Environment, that is where the event of Sungai Kim Kim and Pasir Gudang occurs, and as well as the increase of illegal plastic operations as well as the importation of plastic waste into the country. However, with the support of the colleagues in Department of Environment and other agencies, we're able to address all these issues, and we hope that in the challenges in future will be then smooth sailing for all of us. In fact, in conjunction with the Earth Day climate action, and of course we want everything to be action oriented rather than on a paper. So in response to Dr. Bala's challenges and waste pollution management, maybe I would like to share there's about 7 elements in the perspective of Department of Environment, and I would like to share the slides with all of the viewers. So please bear with me. Okay, everybody is able to see the slide? It's okay, Dr. Bala? Okay. So in battling the challenges of the coming decades, as what Dr. Bala was mentioning just now, in terms of increase of population, technology and industries, and in the perspective of Department of Environment, we divide it into 7. First is the globalization, and rapid economic growth leads to the increased number of industries with different level of complexity. In relation to this also with the increase of urbanization as mentioned just now. Secondly is the intangible cost benefits on the installation and maintenance of pollution control equipment and systems and environmental sound waste management. So how are we going to promote environmental sound waste management even though this principle has embarked in our environmental policy in the country? Third is to manage new emerging pollutants. For example, VOCs, there is the volatile organic compounds, endocrine disruptors, as well as microplastics. Fourth is how are we going to promote recycling and reuse of waste, because we want to reduce the waste to be dumped at the secure landfill, and that is where the economy, the circular economy comes in. And the next one is the prevention of illegal dumping of waste. For your information, last year the UOE experienced about 9 incidents of illegal dumping of waste, and this is a lot of challenges to the environment because it gives a risk to the environmental health as well as especially when it's dumped nearby the water supply. Next is on the impactful public awareness and education program. This is where we need to look into areas of where we need to find new areas whereby we be able to have a behavioral science approach, meaning that now they are now looking into the nudge approach, and we are also looking how we can have an impactful public awareness and education program, not only awareness and commitment but also action oriented program. Last but not least is on the prevention of illegal importation of waste, including plastic waste, whereby for information we have sent about 189 containers, plastic containers back to their country of origin, and there are about 69 more containers we are yet to send it back. And since last year we have also helped close down of illegal factories. About 218 factories has been closed down and have been taken to court for offences under the Environmental Quality Act and regulations underneath. So in this perspective, in the next decade, what are the readiness of the industries? And in fact, Department of Environment, as of now and in future, we are going to establish platforms to ensure that these industries will be able to meet the challenges and also to comply with the Environmental Quality Act and its regulations. And we are also in the midst of amending the Environmental Quality Act, taking into consideration the future challenges. One of it is to implement the self-regulation and performance monitoring. If we are aware, Department of Environment has introduced GSR, that is the guided self-regulation, since 2016, whereby in order for us to achieve environmental excellence, there are 7 environmental mainstreaming tools. If I can just briefly mention the 7, that is, one is the environmental policy, secondly is the environmental budget, the third is environmental monitoring committee, the fourth is on the environmental facility, the fifth is the environmental competency, and this is very crucial so that the competency lies within the industries as well as the authority, environmental reporting and communication, and last but not least is the environmental transparency. That is where we want the environmental advocacy, environmental accountability, and environmental transparency is embedded to the civil society. Next is to enhance knowledge and competencies on environmental management within the organization. This is through the certified program where Department of Environment has provided about 8 areas of certified program that covers environmental pollution control for air, water, and scheduled waste. Next is in the implementation in enhancing the waste characteristic in the environment electronic scheduled waste information system. At the moment, all waste generators are required to notify Department of Environment in terms of the waste generation, the volume, and the element of disposal and recovery or reused. But now we are also enhancing these waste characteristics and the e-waste so that this can be an early warning system to the authority and to other relevant agencies. Next is, of course, the readiness of the industries to implement new technology and green technology. This is where the importance of, as what mentioned by Dr. Bala just now, the technology, the green technology, as well as the Industrial Revolution 4.0, where these are the opportunities that need to be looked into by the industries as well as the Department of Environment. And of course, money matters. The need to allocate sufficient capital and operation expenditure for environmental protection and operations. Okay, in terms of the government, in part as Department of Environment, of course, we are the authority to enforce the regulations or the provisions under Environmental Quality Act and the regulations underneath. And of course, we are aware that there is existing integrated scheduled waste, which is in Negeri Sembilan, and there is also a proposal to look into the integrated scheduled waste management in a regional approach. At the same time, also looking into putting an industry ecosystem within the integrated scheduled waste management. And secondly is, of course, as mentioned just now, is the recovery and disposal center at each region. This is, we want to improve or enhance the principle of cradle to cradle and to minimize waste disposal into the secure landfill. Next one is on the vehicle tracking system for monitoring of scheduled waste. And this is where we want to monitor closely the movement of the scheduled waste transporter so that they are being tracked from one point to the other point, so that to reduce the illegal dumping of scheduled waste. And we are going to also look into the forensics of scheduled waste and other waste management. Next is on the real monitoring on industries' air emission discharges, and this is what we have been doing at the moment, and we are also embarking on big data element. This is very important so that we can make better plans and strategic enforcement action and smart monitoring. Next is on the promotion of self-regulation in industries. This is where we want the industries to be accountable, and they will self-regulate their elements to comply with the environmental requirements so that we together can achieve towards environmental excellence. And of course, besides looking at the operations of the industries, we also emphasize on the planning of the industry itself, meaning that during the preparation of the environmental impact assessment or the implementation of the environmental management plan or the environmental monitoring reporting, this will be enhanced through the qualified person, so that the qualified person will be able to advise the industries as well to ensure that the compliance of each requirements under the Environmental Quality Act. Okay, what is the important roles of the society? And I think this is very crucial in the next decade, as we cannot rely much on the authority to do enforcement. In some cases, usually the authority will be blamed for not doing enough enforcement. But we need to look into areas whereby we want the society to advocate the importance of environmental protection, as well as as well as conveying atau or informing environmental offences to Department of Environment so that we can nab the culprit. So we want the society to be part of the solution with the theme of our environment, our shared responsibility. And we need to have an effective communication plan. And I think the one that during COVID-19, the communication plan set by Ministry of Health, as well as Majlis Keselamatan Negara, and the government has set very good examples for the department to look into. And of course, the challenges, the challenges or the requirements from the society is to reduce the generation of household e-waste, or not only household e-waste, but all types of e-waste, whereby we need to educate in terms of segregation and dispose in a proper manner. And in fact, Department of Environment is embarking on the household e-waste program, and we are looking into the element of extended procedure responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, this slide, what I would like to show is the latest information of 2019 on the generation of scheduled waste in Malaysia. And as you can see from the graph, shows that in total of 2019, there's about 4 million tons of scheduled waste were generated. And the states that generate the most scheduled waste is Selangor, so about 1 million, and then followed by Johor, 917,000, followed by Negeri Sembilan, Pulau Pinang, and Pahang, and the rest, as you can see on the screen. And of course, the list is Putrajaya, because we know that it's a government administrative center. But we do monitor the waste generated in all the states throughout the country. Okay, in terms of the rate, the percentage of waste that we generated and been treated, as you can see that only 2% goes undergo the chemical and physical treatment. 12% undergoes solidification, and 24% goes for incineration, and 62%, there's quite a big amount of percentage that is disposed at secure landfill. And this is where we need to come up with a concrete program how we need to reduce the disposal of waste at the secure landfill. So for your information, it's a total of 147,000 tons of scheduled waste was disposed at Quality Alam Sdn Bhd. That is amounted to 62% went to the secure landfill. So I think these are the figures, very alarming figures, that we need to reduce the disposal of waste to the secure landfill. Okay, so I think we need to synergize this partnership between the government, the industries, and the society to manage waste and pollution, because environment is our shared responsibility, and in this manner, more engagement need to be carried out at the planning stage so that we are able to come with strategic plans and action plans to be implemented, so that the cost for environmental protection has to be accounted at the planning stage. Yeah? Sometimes we made to know that, okay, they don't have enough budget to do environmental monitoring, environmental protection, which I think is high time that they put serious on allocating the environmental budget for environmental protection and control. Secondly is on the stakeholder must play their part to curb pollution from the root cause as much as possible. We need to improve, of course, environmental complaints that we receive, meaning that we want public to work with the Department of Environment so that we can curb the culprits. It will be difficult if we when we at the incident site, there's nobody there. It's just the way. So we cannot actually identify who are the culprit. But if we have a strategic planning or a strategic planning to to investigate through intelligence and so forth, we can definitely improve the culprit that we need to put them to enforcement action or to court. And last but not least, of course, we are going to implement the extended procedure responsibility or EPR, and at the moment under the draft environmental regulations for electronic household e-waste, we are putting these principles into the management of the scheduled household e-waste. I think for all, I start my presentation, and I welcome any comments or critical suggestion to improve our management of waste and pollution in the next decade. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you, Dr. Bala.
Thank you, Puan Nordin. That was quite a comprehensive coverage of waste management from DOE's perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all understand that solid waste management is just one small part of what DOE does. DOE has many other things in their plate. Scheduled waste is just one of the many things that they do. Puan Nordin, maybe I will just ask this question first. No, you mentioned I can imagine the challenges in managing. There's so many aspects to look at. The problems are never ending. But just over the next 10 years, what do you think is going to be your biggest challenge? Is it the industry degil, or masyarakat is not changing their attitude, or is it technology not available, or is it not enough budget for enforcement? What is the single biggest challenge that you think the country will face or the DOE will face?
I think if we look into the element of a sustainable development, the country needs to grow. So when the country needs to grow, so we have to be in tandem with the need for development. However, the challenges is to put environment as the main priority. So as what you mentioned, what is the most, I think, if we put in perspective the element of technology, the element of budget, and the element of civil society is important to be able for us to meet all those challenges. So I won't be able to prioritize, as what mentioned, let's say, is it the industries or the technology, but I think all of it has its own importance in making sure that we are able to meet those challenges. And I think we need to strategize our effort to look all matters. And one of the challenges, if I can share, is in terms of as an enforcement agency, we are being reminded that the element of human resource will not be increased. We need to look into matters like smart enforcement, technology, and so forth to curb this pollution problem. So I think that's why we need the responsibility of the industries to be self-regulated, so that they will regulate the compliance as well as will add value to the commitment towards environmental protection. I think that's all, Dr. Bala. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I go to the next speaker, I'll take one question from the audience. There are actually two persons. I think both of them are from Sarawak, Siti Zaria and Mr. Yi is in Yao. So their question is about construction waste. They think the construction waste is a major problem, yet it's not very well regulated, and we're also not sure whether it's DOE's jurisdiction or otherwise. Can you comment?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bala, and thank you for the question. Well, in terms of construction waste, is under the purview of the Akta Pengurusan Sistem Pekerja dan Pembersihan Awam. DOE is not under the purview of Department of Environment, but under the purview of the Act, Akta Sistem Pekerja and Pembersihan Awam, which I think is under, and states need to be a signatory to this Act. And I've been informed that only 7 states that has been a signatory to this Act implemented the Act. Thank you, Dr. Bala.
Okay, thank you for Nolin. There are 3 other questions, but I'm going to hold on to that questions to allow for our next speaker to speak first. So I have questions from Ili Kamila, Nurin Daos, and Archana Singh. So just hang on to your questions. We'll go to the second speaker first.
Okay.
Can I call Dr. Teng? Dr. Teng,
hello.
The floor is yours. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Bala. Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to add on the previous question, maybe on the C&D waste, because under the Act 672, there is a sub-regulations on construction waste management, and under CIDB, there is also one Malaysia standard. They have published one Malaysia standard on construction waste management. So maybe those who ask the question can refer to this.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Teng, so maybe what you can do is maybe you can very quickly share the type of work that you do, and then my question would be, what do you think are the key challenges in terms of waste management in the coming decades?
Okay. In short, I study rubbish. Okay, I studied rubbish from my first degree to PhD degree. So with CIDB, I was involved in the what they call the construction waste management guideline development and the Malaysia standard. That's why I know there's a document there. With the National Waste Management Department, we involved in other waste management program like food waste management and also recycling and so on. With DOE, with One Norlin, we actually, the whole Japanese team from Japan government, we were involved in household e-waste management projects. So basically, I'm a consultant. So I work in Malaysia and also other overseas country, mainly to develop documents like master plan, strategic plan, and also to conduct pilot projects and so on. Okay, so for the challenges, I'm going to show my slide here. Can you see the slide?
Yes, I can see your slides. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll show here. Okay, this is the first slide. You see a lot of rubbish here. Okay, just give you a brief idea. The World Bank actually estimated the whole world would generate 3.4 billion tons of waste per year by 2050. And I have used this same like estimation to calculate how much we will generate in Malaysia. That will come out with about 23.6 million tons a year by 2050 if we do not do anything. This is like BAU, business as usual situation. Okay, so today mainly we are going to talk about future. But before I touch on the future, let me show you this one slide just to show you what happened in Malaysia for waste management for the past 50 years. Even more than 50 years if you talk about, you know, like earlier than 1970s. I think I can use a pointer here. There's a pointer. Okay, you can see here in old days, 1970s. During that time, actually, I think Malaysian side, we are more focusing on the dump side for waste management issues because they create a lot of hygiene problems, pollution, and health concern. So only after that, in 1974, you see here, this is the year very important document come out. We have an Environmental Quality Act, and then follow up from there. We have a few documents come out. One is ABC Plan, 1987. We have a Schedule Waste Regulation, 1989, and then slowly develop. We have these landfill guidelines in 2004 because environmental protection is becoming more and more concern for the landfill operations and also the development of the new landfill. As well as this proper closure of landfill, we have a new guidelines developed during that time. And in 2006, Malaysia government developed a Malaysia Solid Waste Management Strategic Plan 2005 and Waste Minimization Plan 2006. We emphasize a lot of 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle. I think if you can remember the 3 color bins, we during that time, I think you can see these 3 color bins everywhere. Okay, and then along the way, when we develop, the country develop, we are more concerned, we are more putting more focus on quality services. So that's where come out with the Akta 672, the 672 Act, the Solid Waste Act. Then again, we develop and we are looking into alternative solutions. We talk more about composting of food waste. We talk more about a waste to energy plant, although we don't have a big one now, but that is the plan up to now, 2020. And on the right side, bottom here, you can see here specific waste. What I observe when a country more developed, we are more looking into specific category of waste. Like in Malaysia, we have already a strategic plan for food waste management. We also look into construction waste, e-waste, household hazardous waste, and also even disposable diapers, which is a big problem in Malaysia. So this is 50 years what we progressed from 1970 to 2020. Okay, explain 50 years in 1 minute. So what next is about the way forward. What's the key challenges? Like Dr. Bala asked us now, what's the key challenges? I'm not going to talk more technical today because I think today is not a platform for technical, like waste to energy, what technology is better to use and all this. I basically grouped all the challenges that I feel and I observe, and I divided into 4. I think the first one, everybody will agree, right? Awareness. We have very low awareness in Malaysia. Do you agree? But I would say, actually, no. Malaysia is not that low in awareness. Bear with me. Actually, I've done a survey. About 75% of Malaysians understand what is recycling, and they know recycling is very important, but yet they don't do it. So what is the problem? It's attitude problem. Is no more awareness problem. So I always say we have to change. It's time for Malaysian to change. We are now in 2020. We are talking about way forward 2030, 2040. So the mindset must be changed towards a developed nation's mindset. Okay. So you can see here the first strategies or the way forward I feel Malaysian really need to do is attitude change. Then I feel Malaysian, we really cannot rely too much on carrot approach. We have to start using stick approach. I still remember when I was with the minister, Mestek YD Yo last year in the panel together. She received, she got a lot of comments from the participants. What is the incentive for us to do segregation, recycling, and so on? So I was quite annoyed with the question actually. Why? Because at this age, you know, we are in 2019 that time, now 2020, you still rely on incentive to do segregation. Can you do by yourself from your own initiative? You have to do this segregation like all the Japanese doing. So it is a matter of mindset. You want to continue with your mindset of developing country, or we are moving towards developed countries mindset. So I believe in Malaysia, it's time for us to need more stick approach. We have to stick and cane those people who never follow and stick to their old pattern. So education, I believe everybody agree, and also I believe awareness creation is still needed. We still need to continuously carry out awareness creation activities and so on. But it is the main thing to change is the attitude, right? Then the next one about willingness to pay. This is the one of the biggest problem I observe in waste management in Malaysia. I'm sorry to say, willingness to pay is low, not only among the people, even the government. I give you one example. Actually, okay, you see this picture. There are different kind of waste here. I put it into positive value and negative value. So not all waste can generate revenue. A lot of ways we have to understand that they actually need cost for management. And I realize a lot of things like, okay, I take one example of fluorescent lamp. Here you can see fluorescent lamp is 100% can be recycled. But in Malaysia, we have no recycler because there is no system in place. So as a waste management expert, I also have to put the lamp in the dustbin for disposal. I think I can ask Puan Norlin, maybe he's doing the same, you know. But industry, yes, they have regulations on the EQA. They have to proper dispose it. So I also have a meeting with a government department before, and I realized even in the whole building of the government, the lamp, after they change by the technicians, all also go to the landfill. Why? Because if you properly go to the disposal center, like in Quality Alam, you have to pay very expensive, like 3,700 something per ton of this waste. So you look at this diagram, you will realize actually a lot of waste is not generating revenue. It's a cost. So whether the government, the people is ready to pay. So for this, I put a big question mark here, waste to wealth. This is what I also have a lot of argument with the people from the government sometimes, because with them, when they talk about waste to wealth, I try to ask them, are you sure? Are you sure you're making money from waste? But the government still announcing they are spending billions and millions, every year to deal with waste. So when a company is doing waste to energy, let's say, I can fully understand when they say waste to wealth, but it's not government. Government should always emphasize waste is a responsibility for the people. Waste is a responsibility, and I believe in the future, the way forward, we have to share the responsibilities, different players. Like Puan Norlin also mentioned about EPR, Extended Producers Responsibilities. We with the Japanese government, we have helped Malaysia government to develop the first EPR regulation on household e-waste. And I believe EPR regulations is the way forward. A lot of new legal framework for EPR regulations will come out in the future to handle different category of waste, especially waste that is not carrying any positive value. Okay, then the next here you can see here packaging law. This is also what I have been pushing this so long to the government. We Malaysia really need a packaging law, because we are dealing with waste at one hand. It's so burdened by tons of waste, but the manufacturer is producing their packaging, product packaging as they like. I think many of you will experience the same thing. Raya is coming nearby. So you buy a thing, you open, it's like, oh shit, half of it is empty. You're like cheated, the product, because there is simply no product packaging law to control the manufacturers. So we need this kind of legal instrument to come in the future. Okay, the next challenge that I identify is the setting of priority. I think we are always low in decision making, low priority in decision making for waste management. Waste is still waste, so we always have the least priority by the government, and there are so many hidden problems. I will share with you here. Some numbers. Maybe Dr. Bala can communicate with me here, because all the microphones of other people are closed. This is the population of Malaysia. Okay, can you guess, Dr. Bala, what is this number?
Is that the I don't know. Is that the population in 2050?
No, it's rubbish. Actually, it's more mobile phone subscriber in Malaysia. So you can guess how much phone actually we have in the country. Many people actually carrying more than one mobile phone. Okay, then the next one, 131 million. Okay, I'll go straight to the answer. This is the consumption of phone lithium batteries in Malaysia, and these numbers take in only like the lithium battery, the power bank, excluding notebooks and rechargeable home batteries. This is 131 million. And how about this? Consumption of disposable diapers in Malaysia is 4.1 billion pieces, excluding diapers for adults. And I was told that actually the adults diaper is getting more and more common now in the market. Okay, so this is even higher, 14.1 billion. What is this? This is a cigarette butts generation in Malaysia, pieces per year. And I can assure you, these 14 billion pieces of cigarette butts are all on the ground, on the street, and flush into the drain and create all the ocean plastics issues and all this. Okay, so I put a small notes there. Can someone please create butts that can be eaten? So after you smoke, I'm not a smoker. So after you smoke, you can just swallow the butts, then you will solve all the problem. So where is the priority that the government have set here? We have banned the straw, correct? This is the number of straw here, about 11 million, okay, 11 millions. And I put here the number of fluorescent lamp in the country is about 70 million. But this 70 million was about 3 to 4 years back. I think that was before the LED become more common. Now the numbers can be reduced. So you see here, we have other emerging and more alarming issues to handle. Of course, I don't mean straw ban is not right. We are doing the right thing. The whole world is doing the right thing. But if you compare the straw's impact with the diapers impact, it's just nothing. The diapers can be 100 times, 150 times more heavier than a piece of straw, and the impact is tremendous. Okay, this is just to show you actually how the governments, in Malaysia, the priority, setting of priority, and a lot of hidden problems. So in the future, in the coming 20, 30 years, I believe more and more government interventions are needed. Waste management hierarchy should be strictly followed. I think many of you knows the hierarchy. We emphasize reduce, reuse, and then least priority is disposal. But what's happening now? I think the government knows the waste management hierarchy, but all the fluorescent lamp, as I say, still to the disposal. You see, all the diapers still to the disposal. There is no initiative, no system in place for many problematic waste. So on the right here, you see someone has to pay. Someone has to bear the cost and we have to use necessary instrument. That's what I told the minister last time also. I say there are three possibilities to solve this problem. First, the government to pay. Some countries' government really paying for solving the problem. But if the Malaysian government is not ready to pay, or we don't have money to pay, the second option is ask the people to pay. So if you dare not to ask the people to pay because of political reason or whatever, the third option is ask the manufacturer and importer to pay. This model, ask the manufacturer and importer to pay, is what we actually adopted for the EPR regulations for DOE to deal with e-waste. So the manufacturer and importer depends on how much volume of waste the products that they sell in the market, they have to pay. Okay. So the last here, this is something that many people don't see it as important. Okay. Juan Norlin also mentioned just now about strategic planning and so on. How to do strategic planning if we do not have data? We are too weak in data collection and database management. And from my experience, even when we talk to the officers, we realize they not even understand what is database management. When you ask them, do you have a database management? Yes. Then you ask them to show you is basically an Excel sheet. So this is not database management. So data is so important, and we are yet so weak in database management. And many government ministries or departments I see, they don't see the priority in data, the importance of data. So in the future, I believe integration of data at all levels is very, very important. And here, reporting the requirement. Reporting requirement applies to all waste generator, transporter, or any stakeholders. You have to report how much waste, what kind of waste, who are your contractors, where they send. These are all should be in place in the future. And not to forget, here, big data. I think we are in this new normal time, new normal era. We have to understand data is everywhere, and Internet of Things in waste management is getting more and more common from now on. So just give a summary. There are many other challenges which I'm not going to touch more. I just give you a summary of what waste management that I feel tomorrow in Malaysia will happen. First, not all waste are generating, so it is a cost. So please, we have to emphasize on responsibility, not always on the wealth. Government interventions are required, and I believe we are at a time that we need stick approach. Then someone has to pay. Start with the industrial, commercial, and institution. Okay, this is the ICI sectors that I feel government have to really enforce them to play their role, and by using the stick approach. The third one, more stringent rules on polluter pay or producer pay principle, extended producers responsibilities concept. Be responsible on your own waste. So the manufacturer, you cannot produce anything as you like. Maybe there's a law to control your packaging and so on. And no more cheap waste disposal. Landfill is getting full. I think everybody understands this. Land is getting more expensive. Operation cost is getting higher. So innovative waste management solution and waste management facilities will be coming out, and more big data and IoT will be used in waste management. The last slide here, I think the future trend, the keywords here will be the shared responsibility. We have to minimize our waste, minimize disposal, because it's no more cheap, and we may have to pay for waste management in the future. Get back to you, Dr. Bala.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Teng. That was very, very interesting, especially the data that you showed about the cigarette butts and the adult diapers. No,
Yeah.
you pointed out something very right at the beginning, that awareness doesn't necessarily translate into action. A lot of people are aware,
Yeah.
but they won't do anything. And I think we need to bridge that, right? If you don't, we cannot get people to change their behavior. Nothing will happen. And what do you think is the key factor in order to make them change their behavior? Is it going to be the stick or something else?
I think it is time for us to have the stick. I always like to quote examples of like Japan. Japan started after World War 1947 to do their segregation at source. So how many years was that? It's 73 years. We are behind Japan 73 years. Taiwan started their waste separation in 1987. We are 33 years behind. So are we still not ready to do that? Are we still have to wait for some years for us to increase our awareness? It's totally not. And I observe one thing very successful in Malaysia itself is the policy on non-smoking in eateries, restaurants. It's so successful. That is a stick approach. Is stick approach that people just obey and follow. I think we just have to slowly come in with a different legal framework, different approach of either you give a compound or different kind of punishment to let people slowly adapt to this new normal.
Okay, Dr. Teng, I'm sure there are going to be questions for you. So
Thanks.
what I'll do is let people start thinking of their questions. I'll just move on to the third speaker.
Sure.
And then after the third speaker, then we can take questions for all three speakers. Huh?
Okay, sure.
So,
thank you.
Let me call upon Mr. Lee. Lee,
Yes.
can you share with us your views about the key challenges in the coming decades?
Yeah, sure.
I think both on, no, I know the first two speakers spoke about waste, but if you want to touch on pollution, you're also welcome.
Okay. All right, here's my slide. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lee.
Okay, I think Wan Nolin and Dr. Teng have covered a lot already. They have taken some of the words out of my mouth, but I will still share from observations and experience as a consultant, and especially doing EIAs and environmental work. I will approach this topic from the 4 keywords that you have given us to identify key challenges over the next 2 decades. The first one is globalization. So as we experienced over the last 2 years, as Wan Nolin has mentioned, there was this issue of transboundary waste. So I think this will be the big issue moving forward, because we live in a globalized world, and waste is no more a local issue, not even a regional, but it's a global issue. So the issue we had was countries disposing waste to Malaysia in the name of recycling. So it was supposed to be recycling, but ended up as a disposal, because in the first place, some of these plastic wastes are very difficult to dispose. And if you read in the news, people in the developed countries were religiously recycling, separating their waste and thinking that it's going to be recycled, but later on they only to find out to their horror that this waste ends up in places like Jinjarum, where it's just burned. So transboundary waste, transboundary issues will be a thing in the next 2 decades. And also the impacts will be transboundary. Like you mentioned, ocean plastics, it comes from everywhere. There's no one single source, although some parties have pinpointed hotspots or countries which are, including Malaysia, which is one of the key culprits in plastics pollution. But I mean, we can safely say that it comes from almost everywhere. Of course, some countries or some regions are more likely to more culpable. And of course, air pollution is also a global issue now. Besides the pollution itself, the global climate issues, climate change, these are definitely global and affects everybody almost equally. So the issue here is there needs to be more international cooperation, global, regional, and harmonized laws and policies. I think ASEAN needs to work together, and the way that Malaysia sent back the waste, I think that's a very good start to show that developing countries, or not even developing countries, Malaysia imported some of the waste from Bangladesh too, so even from developing countries, to have a more harmonized approach in terms of policies, so that, you know, we talk about EPR, so manufacturers all over the world can follow the same set of rules, and they don't have to get confused, or there are no loopholes, there are no gaps, and there are no overlaps. Okay, sharing from just my personal experience about waste. So this is Pulau Layang. It's in the middle of the South China Sea, 300 kilometers from Kota Kinabalu, 400 kilometers from Palawan, Philippines, and 700 kilometers from Vietnam. It's Malaysia's stake in the Spratly Islands. So I was there for a diving trip. Actually, it's a honeymoon. And it's a very nice place because you're in the middle of nowhere. So this is the island. It's a small reclaimed island with a runway, naval base, and one dive resort. That's it. So in the evening, I went out for a walk along the beach, and this is what I came across. Many bottles of plastic and waste. And as I started looking closer, because even a holiday, you know, environmental consultants still have to wear an environmental hat. So I realized, hey, these wastes are coming from different places. Although I'm standing on a little dot in the South China Sea, but the waste is coming from, let me show you. You can't see it, but these two are from Vietnam. These are mineral water from Vietnam, Vietnamese brands. This one is Indonesia. It's an Indonesian brand of drinking water. As far as this is Spritzer from Malaysia. This is deodorant powder from Philippines. And this is a Yohap Singh aluminum can. I think it's made from the Singapore market, but it's made in Malaysia. So just standing on that one spot in the middle of literally nowhere, I found waste, plastic waste, and solid waste from 5 or 6 different countries in the region. So they must have just floated there and landed there. And if you imagine, this is just at one spot. I think people living on the East Coast or on the islands, they will tell you after every monsoon season, the beaches are just filled with waste and debris washed up from the whole of Southeast Asia. And now this is the sunset view, just to give some positive images, since we're talking about a lot of negative stuff nowadays. Okay, the next one, evolving economy and technology. I think Puan Olin and Dr. Ting have already also touched on this, but I'll just share some of my thoughts here. There'll be a lot of new products, new types of waste because of new products and services. So like mentioned earlier already, there will be a lot more mobile battery-powered devices and toys, even little trinkets. You know, you go to events, you get door gifts, and some of these come with little batteries, you know, like this. And toys, children's toys. And we are moving forward with solar power, but you know, behind every solar project, there has to be a battery, right? And nowadays, there are very big batteries. And we talk about Internet of Things. So Internet of Things means you need a lot of sensors, a lot of devices all over the place. And these are all smart. In order to be smart, you need to be powered. You need batteries, 9-volt batteries for your smart tags or your smoke detectors at home, the AA batteries. These are everywhere now. I just realized that, you know, at home we have so many devices. Just looking around you, the mobile, your remote controls, your aircon remote controls, your TV, and your clocks on the wall all have a battery, and they will run out in a year or two. And now the big thing, electric vehicle batteries. So hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles are a good thing for air quality, for climate change, for, you know, local urban air quality, but they also have a big problem in 10 years' time, which is when the batteries deplete and die out. What do you do with it? So all these e-waste leading to e-waste, emerging pollutants, and as mentioned earlier, also there's household hazardous waste, like the fluorescent lamps, which we just put in the bin at the moment. And one more thing is, you know, as we move up the value chain, and we go for more premium stuff, usually premium leads to more waste. As Dr. Ting shared an example just now, you buy a box of chocolate nowadays, it's a big box, but chocolate is actually just this small. So it looks premium, nice packaging, but more waste. And now we're all stuck at home, so we order food. And I guess almost 100% of the food comes with single-use packaging, right? So this is the trend moving forward. In e-commerce, you have lots of packaging. The same device or same item you buy at a shop, you could just take home in your hand, but when it comes delivered, they bubble wrap it once, twice, and then put an envelope, and then it goes into the courier envelope, another piece of plastic, and they stick a plastic sticker on it, and it's just more and more packaging. And moving forward, I think the big thing that we need to bear in mind that we need to move is from a linear economy to a circular economy. I think that was mentioned by Pan Nolin also, meaning that instead of just a one-way street where we extract materials, we make products, we use it, dispose it, and then it goes to landfill and it ends up as pollution. Things need to be circular now. Everything is in a closed loop. So I've taken this chart from the Global Waste Management Outlook by UNEP and the International Solid Waste Association. So where we are normally at now is we talk about natural resources. We take, we make, discard, we dispose. It's a one-way street. But the circular economy, which we want to move towards, moves everything in a closed loop. So through the technical cycles as well as through the biological cycles, we are in a way mimicking the natural cycles in the ecosystems, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, and the food chain. And we try to minimize what goes to final disposal. And if before final disposal, we can at least recover energy from it. Next. Okay, the next one is the growing population. Dr. Lau, you gave us this keyword, so I'm using the keyword. So as population goes up, demand goes up, consumption goes up, and waste naturally would go up. And you also notice as we become more affluent, there's more waste per capita. So this chart here I've shown here, this is USA from 1960 to 2013. You can see that the per capita has gone up, but they've more or less stabilized because awareness, attitudes, and rules and regulations to reduce waste. But they're still ending up at about 2 kilograms per person per day. Whereas here's a chart for Myanmar projecting forward from 2012 to 2025. So I think the general, what we want to see here, or the point here is that per capita waste generation will go up. So it's not just the population growing and generating the same amount of waste per capita, but per person, per year, it will keep on increasing. So this is a key challenge. And I think the big problem is that waste, household waste, solid waste is non-homogeneous, so it is very difficult to manage. Now, of course, we talk about separation at source, but a lot of developing countries, or even you see in Malaysia, we still do not have the habit of separating the waste. And we're going to run out of waste space for waste disposal. We talk about municipal solid waste, construction and demolition waste, etc. There'll be no more waste, no more space, because as mentioned earlier, also land is scarce and the value and price of land is going up. Nobody wants to use the land just to dump waste, and there will be land use conflicts between waste disposal, the need for waste disposal, as well as other needs, especially residential. So this is the typical "not in my backyard" syndrome, the NIMBY. I cite here an example. This is the Aritam landfill. So you can see it's circled in this dotted yellow line. It was meant to last many more years. Unfortunately, it had to be shut down prematurely because all around it, the housing just came up, mushroom. And you can see here, this is totally incongruent or incompatible land use. So there's houses just within like 200 meters from the landfill. And if you talk to the locals there, they will tell you that in the early days before it was fully shut down and rehabilitated and covered, every evening or every time after the rain, there will be an unbearable stench and there'll be a lot of flies invading their houses. And okay, last one, climate change. a key challenge in waste and pollution. So the data here, this chart here is from the International Communication, UN FCCC. So greenhouse gases from landfills are the third largest source of methane in Malaysia. And in the US, it's also the third largest source. So clearly, this is one of the key areas that we need to target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As you know, methane is so much 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide in terms of the greenhouse warming potential. So just by reducing methane from landfills, we could significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the ways, besides capping and burning off the methane, is through waste and resource management. As mentioned earlier, in the circular economy, we reduce the waste. So we treat the problem at the source. So instead of treating what comes out of the landfill, we just reduce the amount of waste going into the landfill, and that will reduce the amount of methane generated because there's less waste in the landfill. And this is a key challenge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the waste sector, including wastewater, because in addition to landfills, the industrial wastewater, especially palm oil mill effluents, are a big, very significant source of methane emissions. And lastly, reducing consumption, increasing efficiency of what we use would lead to less waste and less methane generated from the landfills. Okay, so I will end with this chart. I think a lot of people, all of us are familiar with this chart. Initially, it was 3 Rs, but I think this the Global Waste Management Outlook has expanded it to prevention as the highest in the hierarchy, the most preferred, and least preferred. It's not just disposal, but uncontrolled disposal. So as Dr. Ting explained earlier on, there's cigarette butts are probably the worst uncontrolled disposal solid waste, because it's like the world is my ashtray, so it ends up everywhere and gets washed into the environment and becomes a microplastics problem. And talking about we usually forget about this element of uncontrolled disposal, especially in developing countries. I think this is probably one of the biggest issues, because if the waste is not even captured in this whole system, if it's not put in the bin in the first place, if it's dropped or disposed or just littered indiscriminately, we cannot manage it at all. It goes rogue, and it just goes wherever the ocean current takes it, or it ends up clogging our drains, and we get flash floods and those kind of problems. So I think the attitude problem, this is the one big area that we need to tackle. Unfortunately, I think it's still a big problem in Malaysia, where, as you know, you compare Japan. I mean, I visited Japan. Dr. Teng has much more experience, but my experience in Japan, I could walk the whole day and maybe pick up 5 pieces of rubbish. But say from my office to walk 5 minutes to lunch, I could fill up a whole plastic bag of rubbish along the way. So that is a big problem in Malaysia. So I would just end on that. Sorry, negative note, but something for us to think about. And yes, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Lee. That was very interesting, especially your layang-layang photos. On this issue of waste movement, 50 years ago, we had waste, we'll just dig up a hole behind our house, bury it there. As the country progressed, that the volume became too much, and then we have to send it to a landfill. We have to get the local authorities to pick it up. Now, of course, the problem has become international. There's waste between countries, right? So in the years to come, do you see that transboundary waste as becoming a more serious problem, or you think it might just die away?
Definitely, it will be an even bigger problem, because there's even more waste generated, and the developing countries will be generating even more waste in the years to come. Unless every country can deal with the waste effectively, it gets washed out to sea, and like, the waste from the region could end up on Pulau Tioman after the monsoon season washes it on shore, and that becomes our problem. And this is just solid waste, talking about haze, transboundary haze, or climate change issues. It has to be a solution that everybody works on together with, as you mentioned, shared responsibility, and everybody sharing the costs. And I think, it's time for a stick approach also. Although with a stick approach, there needs to be very strong governance and legal and administrative framework, because without that, stick approach cannot work, because people will just look for loopholes. They find ways to evade. So you cannot really trust people to honor the system all the time.
Okay, Lee, thank you. I think before we move to the next topic, I think we'll take some questions. We have a question from Ili Kamila. Ili is, I think, from Sam Dhabi. Ili, would you like to ask the question now? Okay, let me read the question then. I think the question is perhaps directed to Puan Nurlin. The question is, do you think the generation of scheduled waste at other states are far lower than Selangor, maybe due to lack of awareness? Or is it just simply because Selangor has more factories?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vala, and thank you to Ili for the questions. In terms of Selangor, I think it's not lack of awareness, but because, as you know, that Selangor is one of the states that is actively towards industrial development, and there's a lot of waste or industries operating in Selangor compared to other states. That's why the number of waste generated in Selangor is increased. I think these are the states which have quite a number of waste or industries operated, and if in fact in our records the numbers of industries or industry premises that being operated is mostly in Selangor, Johor, Penang, so and so forth. I think it's not because of lack of awareness, but it's because of the nature of the industry activities in Selangor. Thank you, Dr. Vala.
Okay, thank you, Puan Nurlin. There's another question. Both Puan Nurlin and Dr. Tang mentioned about EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility.
Okay.
And there's a question from Nurin Daus. Nurin, would you like to speak up? Okay. Nurin? Okay, yeah. Here, there you go.
My question is about APR, like how is industry in Malaysia is coping with it? Because I know Germany has been doing this, and I think even though we are actually from WWF, it's actually very hard for us to push people to do the APR. So,
okay, either Dr. Tang or Puan Nurlin, you want to add on?
Well,
maybe Puan Nurlin first.
I'll start first. Well, in terms of EPR, we have started with the draft of the environmental regulations for household e-waste, and that is where the EPR is being introduced. And we have also have some kind of engagement with the industry players, and some of it take this positively, but this is yet we need to engage with them more, because of the COVID, their commitment could be changed because of the challenges that they are facing now during COVID. But I think for Malaysia, we are now implementing it, or will be implementing it under the household e-waste. Thank you.
Dr. Tang,
maybe I can.
Yeah,
I can add a little bit on this experience, because we deal a lot with the industry when we develop the EPR regulations on household e-waste. I think some common brands mentioned here, like Panasonic, Sony, all these are the players, the manufacturers. So we face a hard time when we first introduced. Of course, I still remember the Japanese managing director in Malaysia. Their answer to me is, the HQ in Japan have not given me instruction to follow EPR, but my main responsibility in Malaysia is to sell. Okay, they have to achieve certain sales target, and that's it. But after some time, after we talk more to them and deal more rounds of engagement with them, they all accept it very well, because as simple as like Panasonic, Sony, and all these Toshiba, they are paying EPR fee, recycling fee, when they sell their same brands of product in Europe, in China, in Japan, in Korea, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan. They already regulated. In order for them to sell their product there, they have to pay this recycling fee. So it's just a matter of, you have this regulation in place in Malaysia. They have no problem to follow the rules, but they share one big concern, is they are so worried about no brand or cheap plug brand or those we call it orphan products from China, from India, or wherever, I don't know. So they don't want the fee that they pay is used or misused to treat the waste of these products. So that is what their concern is, and for this aspect, I think the government have to really make sure they are comfortable with this.
Okay.
Cannot hear you, Dr. Bala.
You mentioned about the stick approach is being as very important. Without the stick, people won't do much.
Yeah.
Yep. Even the big companies which do whatever in other countries, because there's no regulation, they won't do it.
Yes, that's what we experience.
Okay.
Another experience. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, but enforcement also requires manpower, and politically, in the last few years, it's not been politically acceptable to expand the civil service. Yep.
Yes.
As far as so, politically, no minister, prime minister will say, yeah, we're going to increase the civil service. Then they'll lose the election. So, given these constraints, how can we do better enforcement? Or is there other methods that we can make sure that industries do it?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think enforcement in an old way required a big team of officers that running around to inspect and so on. But what I call the enforcement in a new era with the new innovative way, or using the IoT or whatever, there are so many different ways of doing enforcement. I give an example in China. Actually, their enforcement is carried out with very few people nowadays. Actually, they have a lot of. You do not need to install CCTV here and there. Of course, they can do it still, like waste bin, recycling bin. They also have a camera there. Just one example, and they have a RFID. They have a different very innovative way of doing enforcement nowadays. And with the approach that I presented just now, reporting requirement, that is one very important element actually for enforcement, because for a commercial, for example, or industry, if you want to renew your operating license, as simple as that, you have to comply with the reporting requirement. So if you don't report, you cannot renew your license, as simple as that. So these are all is the way that you have to be more innovative, how to minimize the manpower use when you do the enforcement in the new era.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tang. Puan Nurlin, anything to add on that?
Oh, okay. In terms of enforcement, what I would like to add, definitely DOE is going into innovative and creative ways to do effective enforcement with the necessary environmental officers. Of course, we are going to use smart enforcement, meaning that we're using tools to assist department in doing our enforcement, as well as we need to also amend the act so that in terms of evidence, we can provide the evidence to the court for prosecution. In fact, there's also an element whereby under the existing act, we need to, the burden of proof has to come from Department of Environment. So we are also thinking on ways how to look into in terms of not only enforcement, but also in terms of the regulations or the provisions under the act, ensure effective enforcement. Thank you.
For all the three speakers, there was a question from Mr. Lee Shan Lee from MPPJ that in terms of willingness to pay, would people be willing to pay an additional fee, a waste disposal fee on top of their cukai tanah or cukai pintu? Now, even to pay cukai pintu, now people complain. What if we added on an additional fee for waste disposal? What will people be willing to pay so that we can have better waste management? Yes, any one of the speakers?
Okay, let me just answer. Personally, yes, I would think people would be willing if they are, aware and they know that this is something that needs to be done. Selangor recently stopped the free water. The first 20 cubic meters is no longer free for all. They're targeting it for B40. So I just received my bill for March and I was surprised that I have to pay now. Then I realized, yeah, they stopped it. So I'm willing to pay for that. And I think people would be willing if they can see the benefit of it. And of course, there needs to be a certain service level, there's quality, that the rubbish, the waste is collected on time. Simple things like the trucks should not be compacting their waste in front of the house anymore and dripping all their leachate in one pool outside. So if they could improve those things to justify collecting a fee, and if the fee is reasonable, I think this is a way forward. Otherwise,
Yes.
money, there's always a perpetual lack of budget.
Lee, so maybe to rephrase the question, okay, you are willing to pay. Do you think the majority of the population are willing to pay?
I can't speak for everyone, but I think Dr. Teng, using the stick approach, if it's a reasonable fee, I'm not sure what we consider reasonable. Talking about maybe tens of ringgit a month, or even less. Because now even water is, say, if I use 12 cubic meters, I'm only paying 6 ringgit. That is still quite, I would say, dirt cheap. So for an important issue like waste, I think it needs to be educated also, and starting from young, I suppose.
Okay, Dr. Teng and Puan Nordin, do you think the majority of the population will be willing to pay extra for waste management?
Puan Nordin first.
Well, in terms of if they understand the benefit of the need to have a proper disposal or management of waste, either scheduled waste or solid waste, then I think the people is willing to pay to a certain amount of money. But of course, it has to be a targeted consumer. For example, as what as Teng was mentioning just now, in terms of the water consumption, right? They're targeted to B14. Maybe we need to find areas that willing to base to a targeted consumer. I think that is my opinion. But I think the awareness is there. It's just a matter of assurance from the management of the waste that they will provide good quality services. Then they will be satisfied on the payment that the willingness to pay to ensure that does not affect any public health or environmental issues. I think that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
All right. I think for waste management, there is a big difference, if I want to say, as compared to water, because we have all these discussed before when we prepare. I was involved in the preparation of the Act 672. The big difference is water and sewerage and all this is in a pipe. No matter how you have to supply, but it's different for waste. Waste is on the wheel. Waste is on the truck, on the wheel. So if you do it not carefully, you will see people throw away their waste anywhere. They just don't want to pay, you see. So if you ask me whether Malaysian in general willing to pay, I would say you will need some time. It will need some time. Like Indah Water is already a good example. When they started a direct billing, every household receive a bill. I think they struggle a long time. That many people just don't bother to pay, and they still have to. They cannot cut off the line. They cannot cut off the sewage line, right? So water, at least you can still cut off lah. I believe in general, Malaysian still not ready to pay now. Although direct billing is already a clause in the Act 672, the government actually have put it aside. I mean, it's not going to implement this in the near future. It would need some time to make Malaysian understand. And Malaysian always ask the question, what kind of service I get, you know, when I pay this money. We already pay the cukai pintu. We already pay the access fee. So isn't that cover waste management already? And more complicated in Malaysia is Act 672 cover only 7 states. The other states are covered under their own, the local government act. So this make the whole thing very, very complicated in terms of payment. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Teng. I'm going to call 2 of the participants to speak. First, I'm going to call Mr. Lee Shen Lee from MPPJ to share the MPPJ experience with willingness to pay. And then I'm going to call Tengku Kalkausa, who has asked a lot of questions, to state her views as well. Maybe Lee Shen Lee first with your MPPJ experience.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Pala, for the opportunity to speak. I have a simple question. I just want to get the response from the participants here, whether representative why they are willing to pay or not. I think I will fully agree with what the opinion put up by Dr. Teng just now. Generally, I think Malaysians are not willing to pay for extra. Whether you are talking about putting up a better service because the land is so scarce, then we need a higher cost for disposal or treatment and so on. So I believe apart from the efficient communication at on the ground level, we need to get the community to participate. We need to incentivize the community to practice the 3R, especially on the reducing the waste at source. If we keep talking about providing the efficiency in waste management, rather than getting the community to be involved and provide them the incentive to reduce the waste, I don't think the waste management we are facing, the problem we are facing today might remain the same in 20 years time. For example, in Petaling Jaya City Council (MPPJ), we have a scheme called property tax rebate scheme to those environmentally friendly house owners. On the aspect of the waste, if you practice recycling, you do a composting, you can apply the rebate of $500 or 100%, whichever lower, to the council on the annual property tax. So we see quite a number of a change on behavior, change on the practice. People start doing the segregation of waste, doing the recycling, because they want to they can enjoy some the rebate on the tax. And at the same time also, I think the local governments, as I know of, many of my colleagues in the other local authorities, they have different kind of initiative or activities to encourage the community-based 3R programs. Like for examples, having the composting for urban farming, teaching on the composting, techniques, and providing them the free bin to compose and so on. So I believe that you need to have a more vertical communications from the federal government who do the planning all the way down to the local authority with the efficient executions by providing them a better capacity, resources, finance at the local level, and even come down to the community or neighborhood level, so that more and more kind of practices can be implemented and then can be showcased to others as the best practices, so that people can have a chance to interact and to learn from each others. So this
you.
is what I says. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, Shirley. Can I call Tengku? Tengku, you are still there? Tengku Kalkausar? I saw you. You want to say something? Okay. So anyway, I'll just read the comments. If we need to pay, we'll try to reduce the generation of waste, but not sure about the public. There might be more illegal disposal and more open burning to avoid the payment. Yeah, and I think people will try many ways to avoid payment. But okay, with that, let me just go on to the next question. Is in the subject of waste, there are many stakeholders. There's government on one side, there's private sector, the contractor, there's public, and so on. And waste also, as you all are aware, different waste are managed differently. DOE only looks after scheduled waste, and then municipal waste comes under other authorities, and so on. So my question is, it's of course very easy to blame others, but what can we all do? How can we strengthen partnership between various parties? How can we work together to make sure our wastes are better managed? So, like I said, there are many different types of waste. Each waste will require a different strategy. So, I'm going to break up this into 3 questions. Maybe Puan Nordin, you can talk about how we can have better partnership for hazardous waste. Dr. Teng, you can focus on municipal solid waste. And Lee, I'm going to give you a difficult one. Can you touch on construction waste? Okay, Puan Nordin first. How can we have better partnership?
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for the questions. I think one of the important thing is to promote circular economy. I think that will be an incentive for this industry to minimize the waste. And I think at the moment, Department of Environment has already embarked on co-processing. But it's only for scheduled waste for the use of in some cement plant. But we need to see a wider spread of utilization of scheduled waste in the context of circular economy. That is one. Number 2, of course, we need to provide some incentive or special funding, because at the moment there's no element of incentives or special funding from the government for industries which produce less waste or investing on clean technology. Under the Environmental Quality Act, there is a provision whereby we need to collect cess from the waste generator, So I mean that if they are putting up less waste, meaning that less money will be needed to put into the cess. But however, incentive is also needed to encourage industries to find innovative ways to minimize the waste. And of course, R&D is very important here, because without R&D, we won't be able to see how this waste can be utilized, or maybe at the moment there are about 77 that is coded under scheduled waste, and maybe with through R&D, then we can reduce the 77 as scheduled waste code into a waste that can use as an alternative raw material or for the purpose of co-processing. And of course, the next one that I'd like to emphasize is we need to facilitate the implementation of clean technology here. So meaning that we need to synergize between the industries, the R&D, the players, to how they can reduce the waste, so that this can also benefit them as the waste generator, and as well as the protection of environment. And what we are looking into is to encourage ecosystem of environmental industries nearby the scheduled waste integrated facility. So meaning that they will complement each other in terms of providing the waste to the other industries that need the waste for as raw material. I think I stopped that for the time being. Thank you, Dr. Bala.
Okay, thank you for Dr. Teng. How do we strengthen partnership amongst all stakeholders as municipal solid waste?
Okay, I think for MSW, the partnership already happening now at all levels, at federal or state or even local government, but it's very complicated in a sense. Again, is the jurisdiction problem. You know, Act 672 federalized waste management to the central government, so it's different from the other states, which is still under the Local Government Act. Like MBPJ, Mr. Lee, my good friend here, is directly under the local government. So, of course, the relationship or the partnership between the local government and the people, the players, the community is much better, I would say, as compared to states that adopt to this 672. Of course, all these states of 672, they still have a solid waste management cooperation. We know SW Corp, they are playing their role. It's more like taking over the role of the local government. They still do a lot of activities with the local community and partnership with the industry and so on. I do agree partly on the incentive, but I don't think in the long run, incentive is something that we should continue, because incentive will not be sustaining in the long run. So I always use like Japan and Taiwan as a more developed nations experience to learn. When Taiwan, the government started with some incentive and a lot of awareness and asking people to cooperate. Then they start to enforce with a stick approach. Then the people really have to follow, and end up as a result, the waste generation rate per capita and in total reduced significantly at that time, at the few years. I don't have a chance to show the graph of Taiwan, the generation, you can see a drop. And then you ask why is this drop? Is because of the enforcement. But they don't enforce overnight. So a lot of communication with the people, asking their participation and partnership together, how to work with the industry, the commercial. Then at the end, they can achieve something very significant in the long run without incentive. Right? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Teng. Mr. Lee, what are your views about strengthening partnership when it comes to construction waste?
Okay, for construction waste, I think there's not so much of the consumer, the public involved. It's the bigger players, the contractors, and of course also the big and the small time contractors. So I think that, as Dr. Teng mentioned earlier on, already CIDB has guidelines. There are a lot of these guidelines. I think what we need moving forward is a more stick approach, as he said, to make it enforceable, or there must be rules. And I think a small but a step forward is now when you see people doing renovations, they all have a skip bin outside the house. So the waste is put into the skip bin, and when it's full, the truck comes and takes it away and replaces it. So I think that is a good step forward. But usually you notice that the bin ends up like full, and then you don't know what happens to it after that. So I think moving forward is also applying that the 3R or the whole waste hierarchy on the construction sector. I think there are things they can do, like prefabricated construction or IBS, to reduce waste generation on site, to have a more efficient use of the resources. And the old way of using lots of plywood or wood form work, and which is used once and disposed. I think that can be changed also to a more to reusable sort of construction equipment and materials. So I think that people like there's research going on to introduce or to promote more of this prefab construction. I think that is one way that industry can help or to cooperate with the government. But I think the government, local authorities need to also impose more rules to require waste reduction or proper management of waste. Because I think now when you want to renovate, you just demolish, you just get rid of everything, you just out of sight is out of mind.
Okay, thank you, Lee. I just like to get an opinion from someone from Sabah or Sarawak. Dr. Susan, you're still there, right? Dr. Susan? Her face is there, but she's not there. But it's okay. Maybe I just have a peculiar question to ask all three speakers because it's already 4:45 and we're going to end soon. Maybe a strange question. Do you think the COVID pandemic will change the way we manage waste? All I know is my house, we're generating more waste because now we seem to be generating more waste during this lockdown period. So I just want a quick answer. Do you think this pandemic will change the way we generate or manage our waste? Let's start with Dr. Tang first.
Okay, I think I read some statistic. I was locked at home, so I didn't do any real research on the ground or what. But I read published figures by the government, by the local government. Actually, they announced. I think Mr. Lee Lishan, MBPJ, also faced the same problem. The waste in total reduced, mainly because the industrial and commercial stop operation. But household waste, I believe it's increased, like Dr. Bala just mentioned, because a lot of internet, like e-commerce, like Mr. Lee also mentioned, a lot of packaging waste from my house, also a lot of waste. So in general, it reduced in total, but household waste increased. Talk about after this pandemic era, actually I was thinking at home, what can be done, after pandemic. Shall we have a new normal for waste management or waste handling or whatever? And happened that yesterday in the news I read, in China, after they removed the lockdown in some cities, they have new rules set up, such as a distancing of 1 meter at least, or no mass gathering, and also mandatory to wear face masks. And interesting to see, one of the requirements they put in is a mandatory source separation of waste at the household at source. That is already enforced in some cities in China, and they put in quite heavy penalty if you are not doing this. So this is something that we can actually refer to after pandemic. It's time for us to start some new normal approach or whatever you call it. So I think it's possible we can achieve something more stringent and better than before.
Okay, thank you. Lee, you want to share your thoughts?
I don't think there will be significant change unless we deliberately make a change. But I think there was some interesting data also that at a session by CASA last week, they reported that the solid waste that they've been fishing out of Klang River has dropped by 30%, meaning that there's less waste, indiscriminate dumping into the river. So it does show that, yes, we can reduce it, and if we want to. So I think the question is, like Dr. Ting mentioned, the attitude leading to action. And of course, also a more holistic enforcement approach. So I believe, yes, it can happen, but I don't think there will be a significant or automatic change just because of the MCO or COVID.
Okay, thank you, Lee. But we're talking about this question of, has the COVID pandemic change the way we generate waste, or will it change the way we manage waste in the coming weeks or months? Because my house, we are generating a lot of waste now, staying at home. Puan Nurlin? Your mic is not on. Your mic is not on.
Okay, doctor. Can
Okay.
you repeat the question again?
Yes. So I was just wondering whether the COVID-19 lockdown and the pandemic, will it change? Is it changing the way we generate waste, or will it change the way we manage waste in the coming months? Because my house now, because everybody's staying at home, we generate a lot of waste.
Yeah. I think it depends on the attitude of the household, because some they are very committed. They even have their own composting. They compose their food waste. Especially when you are at home, there's a lot of food waste. Other than I think most of it, majority is food waste. So some of it, they already come up with certain action to compose their food waste. But for others, I'm not so sure. They could just simply throw the food waste into the waste. So I think that's two. It depends on the attitude of the household. If they are very concerned about the waste, I'm sure they will do something to segregate the waste and of course send it to the bila kat depan rumah tu untuk segregate the waste. But if those who doesn't care, they just business as usual. So I think what important now is the awareness of the people. Of course, it's not only awareness but also the commitment and the need to minimize the waste, and to, of course, one more thing is to ensure that we need to we need to have a new approach of having the nudge concept. I don't know whether you have heard about nudge, but I think this is the way forward that in terms of behavioral science to introduce a nudge concept. I think it's already implemented in certain countries like Japan and UK, and I think we need to go along that rather than in addition to stick approach. I think what matters now is the attitude of the household during COVID-19. Thank you, Dr. Bala.
Thank you, Puan Orlin. Okay, we have come to 10 minutes to 5, so we're going to end soon. So I think we had very interesting discussion today from so many things. I think it's a very complex topic, many stakeholders, many challenges. And so what I'm going to do now is, the last 10 minutes, request the speakers to maybe just summarize or recap whatever you said and your last words. Maybe I'll just give everyone 2 minutes each. Can we start with Dr. Teng? What are your last words? Within 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I think from what I've summarized just now, the 4 biggest, we have a lot more actually, but I have summarized and grouped into 4 biggest challenges that we are going to face, we are facing now, and the way forward in the next 20, 30 years maybe. I believe there is a strong need of government intervention in waste management, especially for materials that is not generating any revenue, recyclable, but is not interested by the private sectors. So this is always, I told the people in the government also, if those recyclables materials or generating revenue do not need the government to do anything. Let the market driven. Let it be market driven. The government should give hand on things that is not making money, and how to do it. If the government has no money, they dare not to ask the people to pay. So use the instrument, use the tool. So that is what I feel the biggest thing we need is government intervention. And I have a slide just now. Actually, I didn't explain in details. Is the you see the gear? There is a lot of different challenges, and in the middle there is a political view. So nothing can move if the gear in the center is moved. So I observed in Malaysia for the past 20 years, a lot of good strategies, a lot of things is often what I call influenced by political view. So most of the approach apply or kick off in Malaysia are all politically preferred or favored. You know, I think I think everybody aware of this. Okay, so sometimes a good approach, but it's not politically favored, so it won't kick off in Malaysia. So these are all related to the four main things: willingness to pay, the government intervention must be there, and don't forget, data is what we need. So in Malaysia, I think we seriously lack of data until now, 2020. I started to talk about this data, the importance of data 20 years ago. After 20 years, still there is no data. So this is amazingly lacking in Malaysia. I think that's all from my side here. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Teng, thank you. Can I call Mr. Lee?
Yes, Dr. Bala. I think just to recap with that overall chart, moving from a linear economy to a circular economy, because I think that is a very long-term guiding principle that we need to reduce the waste, and not just to reduce, but to prevent the waste from being generated in the first place. And also that will take off pressure on the natural resources, the need to extract or to mine or to extract more resources from the environment. And of course, I agree with Dr. Teng that government needs to get involved. The government needs to be the one setting the pace to set the direction and the policy first, because in this case, like you said, waste can leak very easily. It's not like, that you mentioned rightly, so it's not in a pipe. So if you impose rules, and it's very easy for people to just dump. And I think it's a bit of a contradiction of, we say people are aware, but they still would be willing to dump illegally because they're just not willing to pay. So moving forward is a change of mindset, I think, for everyone to realize that we are both the problem as well as part of the solution. So we all need to play our part, and put your money where your mouth is, basically. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lee. And I think Wan Norlin had to go, so we don't have her here now. So anyway, it's already almost 5. I wish to thank everyone, Wan Norlin, Dr. Teng, Mr. Lee, for your insightful presentation and views, and also to all the participants, particularly those who asked questions and gave their comments. Thank you very much. I hope this has been a fruitful session for everyone. I actually learned a lot of things, particularly from this Dr. Teng's slides and from Lee's photographs at Layang-Layang. So that's quite interesting to see bottles from so many countries coming there. So with that, thank you very much. And Dr. Teng and Lee, if you don't mind, you can type your email in the chat box so that if anybody wants to contact you, they can do it.
Sure.
Sure. And everyone, thank you very much. Have a good day. See you all at our next forum. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can type your email address there, please.
Thank you, everyone.